So he said that the Chiddush of the Baal Hailula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that Ein Sof, the Mailmad in Ketzel, Matmad in Tachlis, is not talking about the extent of the reach of the effect that the Eibishter is able to descend to the lowest levels, and there we see his signature in terms of the infinite creations and so on, and ascend concealed, beyond. That's not the meaning of the statement. That's how we would have understood it without the Frierdiker Rebbe's statement. What did the Frierdiker Rebbe say? What's the big chiddush? That was again the whole Maamre revolves around this. These Maamarim, and that is that that's not the pshat in the Zohar. What is the pshat in the Zohar? Anyone?
Two dargahs.
In the Ein Sof itself, bimkoimoi, in the words of the Maamre, in its own place, there are these two dargahs, and that led to the immediate problem and difficulty. How is it possible to speak of two dargahs in Ein Sof when, as the Alter Rebbe explains, that Ein Sof means Ein Sof? Not just that it comes from the Oir, from a place that's Ein Sof. The Oir itself is Ein Sof. The revelation is infinite. If you're speaking infinite, you cannot be speaking of dargahs, and certainly not a hefresh gadol b'neiah. A great distinction between them. What was the nekud of the answer, which he's speaking about now as well? The nekud of the answer is, first, you just use the language before even trying to understand it, which we've been dealing with for weeks, but just as the language, what's the nekuda?
Yechelis, is that?
That we're not speaking Yechelis, which means another term. Yechelis is a term for anything applied to above Lamaila. We're not speaking of. He actually says Mo'er. The source, Taka, there, you cannot speak of two dargahs. Everything is possible. You cannot identify one thing over the other or anything for that matter. So what are we speaking of? Yeah, no. A ha'ora, he says, actually, a ha'ora, merely a glimmer, a reflection. So since we're speaking a ha'ora, then it can be two dargahs, but that doesn't fully answer the question. It's still blikvul. So what are we suggesting is the meaning that it is two dargahs? Why? This is all to explain the oitzer. The bottom line is you have to be able to, someone asks you, learning the Maamre Basi Legani, talks about what is this oitzer, and give him a 5-minute explanation. This is Maamre we're learning for years now. The last couple of years, Poshtetz Kipshuta is all about the oitzer. Last year, the year earlier, what are you going to say? That's a litmus test. Can you say anything? What is this oitzer? That's what we're talking about. No. So so we're getting closer to answering the questions. And what's the answer that this Maamre, Tavshin Chavav Basi Legani, and likewise now, is addressing? How is it possible to have two dargahs? So the Maamre really didn't spell it out, which is why everybody is grappling. But we did offer several times, we repeated the explanation that the chayr is the pshat, and that is the Maamre gives two mashalim, Rav, then Bais, and Levush. But the main one is Rav, but translated for God. What is it? Okay, so my explanation fell on deaf ears.
There's Maki HaKarev and Maki HaRachik. There's one that's a level that's revealed and a level that's not by definition revealed, that he kind of keeps to himself. That's the insight.
Keeps to himself because why? Is
nature, its very nature is to not be revealed.
So how are there two dargahs there? You just told me not revealed. The Mailamad in Ketz means, as he says, Sosum, the Ne'elam. So how are there two dargahs? You're telling me it's one dargah. It's one thing. It's a concealed, essential, whatever you're saying. But how's it two dargahs? And Hefresh Godel B'neiim, not just two levels, two possibilities, but a big distinction. We suggested yesterday, and the day before I repeated it again, maybe it's not sticking, maybe now it'll stick. If to think about it, I'm suggesting that to translate this in simple language, what that darga is God considering himself. The Eibush is considering thinking, so God's thinking about himself. So what is he thinking about himself? It is so that answers, that statement I just said now, I hope answers the question. On the one hand, it's an inyan sosum v'nelam, because what's the teichen? What's he thinking about? That he's einad mulvada and he's sosum v'nelam be'etzem. On the other hand, there is gilui here, because what's going on? Atzmos is in a state of something, thinking, gilui, consideration. And therefore, I still answered our question, how there are two dargas. So if there's an inyan of gilui, implicit in that is what? It's not gilui. Implicit in gilui, machshava, I'm thinking about and expressing my truth, then I could not. I could conceal that. Yes implies no. Simple language. If you're saying a statement yes, then implicit is no, right there in the yes. I cannot give you anything better. I never heard anything. Now, how it applies to the Rav is hard to see a little bit. That the Rav is, what's the marshal of the Rav? That he's giving over something that even, it's one thing to say that it's beyond the ken of the Talmud. That's the second marshal. And it's one thing even to say the second marshal is beyond the ken currently, but he gets something, and then sof kosof, he will grasp the whole koi in shadai to the Rebbe. Okay, that's understood. It's even understood that he's giving over something that he'll never get. He'll never get. But the question is, which everybody's grappling with, is, all right, the Talmud doesn't get it, but what does it mean that by the Rav it's Sosum Vanilla? That's the shayla. By the Rav it's Sosum Vanilla. So Lamaila, as we're replying it to God, we have our answer. Of course it's Sosum Vanilla, because what is the Teichen? What's he considering? He's considering his exclusivity and his Einid Mulvadai, that he's considering that he's Sosum V'Nelam. So there's a consideration. He's thinking there's Gilui, but what's the Gilui? The Gilui is Be'etzem, Nelam. And in other words, so what are you thinking? Can you tell me, describe what you think? The answer is no. Thinking about God, and God cannot be described. You get what I just said? So why do you understand that? You're being Megala yourself, but you're being Megala yourself in this tzir of machshava. So what is being this Gala? Yourself, which cannot be explained. So it's saying which is Sosum V'Ne'ela. He's entertaining that which is beyond expression. His exclusivity, his atzmos, that is beyond. So in the Moshel you understand, but in the Nimshal rather.
So question, here's the question.
What? Go ahead.
How is it possible? How do we say that the Makiv HaRochek still has a certain type of effect on the person if it's so Nelam, even from himself?
That's another question. That's another question. In the Moshel, in the Nimshal, we can understand it. And I'll tell you, but in the Moshel, if the Rav gives over just a Moshel and a Chida, and that's all the Talmud forever is left with, what again? It's the question you're asking. And this is all to explain the Oitzer that empowers the soldier to achieve the final victory, in the face of which there is nothing that can withstand it, because it's a Gilui Atzma. That's a related question too, which we're grappling with. So I'll tell you what I think, and can't do more than that. So let's address this, and it's not to say that it's fully clear by me either. So first of all, So the question I just asked, and what the question that Chaim just mentioned is, what does it mean that by the Rav it's sos and benelim? He understands the concept. So we had suggested already that it's like al derech chochma.
No, that's not the point. That's not the point of my question.
I know it's not. It's my question. We answered that, but
Oh.
we'll have to answer the next one.
Oh, sorry.
First, what is going on in the Rav, and then we'll understand. So what's the point of giving it over? What does the Talmud have? So we suggested that it's an Indian that like Chochmah versus Bina. He sees the concept so profoundly that it defies the structure of language and words. It doesn't seem to fit so well. Another possibility is that what is the Rav trying to give over really is just the way he thinks. He's trying to give over the Koyach HaMask. It's also doesn't really fit with the Marshal because the Marshal is talking about an individual idea, but he's giving it in an individual idea. Shlomo Malach said many ideas. The Rav gives many ideas over in Mashalim. But really the objective is he wants the Talmud he wants to share with the Talmud his Koyach HaMaskil, not just his idea, but the very mind that conceives the ideas. He loves the Talmud so much that he wants the Talmud not just to get an idea, but to get him, to be able to see and understand the way he does. The Koyach HaMaskil. The Koyach HaMaskil, of course, is not something that's articulated. It's like it's al derech. So the problem is that's more like Yecholis. In Seichel, it's Yecholis to think of any idea, but it's not true Yecholis because it's only related to Seichel. Anyway, it's all up in the air a little bit, but not clear, and no one has anything definitive to say.
Al derech, perhaps. V'yesh loimer. It's al derech the difference between learning a sicha and a maimer and learning how the Rebbe thinks in the Rebbe's letters.
But the letters are articulated. They're very articulated. They're articulated. Here we want to say he's giving over something that the Talmud's a marshal. It's only a marshal. That's all he's ever left with is a story. And yet, the question you asked, so what is gain now? If all I have is the story, so what have I got? How have I become cleverer? Has it changed my life? I know a story? Not clear at all. And the Nimshal, it's I understand that the Eibishter gives Koiches Atzmi. God gives the house protects you, you're not aware of it. You don't even walk in and look at the ceiling, but you're protected.
From the perspective of the Rav, you have the idea now. So if the idea is
so the Rav feels good. So what does the Talmud have?
That you really have the seichel that the Rav put a seichel in a package and you have it. So in the Nimshal, we could kind of understand the Eibishter has, but
in the Moshel, what do you have? So what's the effect? In the Nimshal, it's the soldier, another way of saying that is Etzem HaNefesh V'atat Tetzava, the Eibush is Megala, the Etzem HaNefesh in every year. Another way of saying this. And in the face of that, the Nisyonis, everything is this battle. You understand it? And give me in the Moshel. The Talmud's walking around with the Moshel of a fox and a wolf. Now, how was that? How's it affected his world, his life? That's what's hard to see. So the two ends of the Moshel are hard to understand. What exactly is in the Rav? No, it's just for this. So what is it? Yes. So not by the Rav it's Oisius, and by the Talmud it's B'tachlis Ahelim. So what is in both ends? It's hard to understand the Moshel. Unless we're going to say it's some atmiyistic property. I mean, the Rav concealed this Moshel. Fact, I've got something that the Rav created, and in that Moshel, he invested like on a nafshik service Yehovah's, he invested himself. So whether I appreciate this or not, and I'm reading that story and hearing that story and saying that story, it's his story in which he's invested himself, and therefore somehow it works on the Talmud and connects the Talmud in a deeply intimate way. That's the point of it. With the Rav, an intimate, maybe more than any idea that it could give him, which would be a meeting of minds. This is more a meeting on some essential level. The Rav told the Maise, he heard the Maise, and they're connected. How does it practically affect him? Going further, it's hard to see. In what way, knowing this story. But we're having a sense, it's the bottom line, it's his story. So I know his story. And in that story, he's invested himself, and he can only give himself in a story. He can't express himself directly because he's not expressible. His seichel is totally beyond. Again, the whole moshe is it's a Rav and Talmud, not Av and Ben, which is a way easier to see. Atzmi said the father. It's nimshich in the tippa, but maybe a better, we would think a better moshe. Akaponim, this is what it is. I mean, it's the Maim itself says, the Maim talks about, he brings the Magid, the mile of Maisa. And why do we need the Shloisha Samim? What's the point of Maisa? The end is that Dafka, the Maisa is the Tanika Poshet, and Dafka, that's the Etzim is drawn again. That's all the same, another model for the whole discussion here of coming down in a marshal in a concealed way. What do you need Maisa? Likewise, the Baal Shem Tov's story, that's the most, for me, the most evocative, the most explanatory, that he wants this Tainug Yiseda the Melech, till now my child and father were relating intellectually, emotionally, and not essence to essence. It's all that's stripped away, and the child comes, no language, nothing. The Rav, not the Rav, the Sar, the clever minister says, I'll get him, I'll speak his story, his language, and I'll bring him back. Not your language, it's his language. That's a connection, Atzmi. Pasha, the father and child, they're connecting. There's nothing, just my child. We're one, deeper than any of. There's no glue. We are one. So talking about it loud, that's the Baal Shem Tov said that's a marshal for the Sipurim of Torah. So we're talking about the Sipurim of Torah. So what's the point? Using the Baal Shem Tov's marshal. So the Eibishter tells us a story on our level. It's a story. It's a story of a fox. Tamais. Torah is full of stories. And in that story, he's invested his very being in that story. So know the story, you know me. Even though the story itself is completely concealed. Tzorech Iyun needs a lot of thinking, and you got a whole Shabbos, a whole night, Friday night, Tassim, Chas v'Shalom. Wish you good night.
Ula Yeshleimer.
Yeah.
Based on what you said, and you're saying that Maimorim and Siches and even letters are instructions, so perhaps the Rebbe's behavior itself is that.
It's Noah. Someone comes, it's Noah. It's Noah Gashmi. Somebody comes back from Tishrei. So there's two Chassidim who come back. So one comes back and he describes Gezavat the Maimorim and Siches. And then there's another fellow that comes back and doesn't understand the Maimorim and Siches, but he describes what happens in Simchas Torah to Noah. So there, you're right. Be'emes is the one that describes the Gashmis, the Ketenuas, and what he saw Begashmis, that's the Etzim is expressed there. More than the Maimer and the Sich. And that's like a story. That's just, he's telling a story. I can tell you what I saw. I can tell you a story. But that fits. That's definitely true. That in Maisa that's where the Etzim lies, stripped of all Giloyim. I can't tell you what the Rebbe said. The niggin that we have, I could be mixing up two things. Maybe Chaim, you remember. Tikka B'Chodesh, So what's the story there? The Chassid came back. He didn't know the Maimah. Just remember how the Maimah began. That's it. Start with this pasuk. V'zehu. Tika b'chedesh hashvi shuva Yisrael. That's all he knew. I mean, there is such a Maisa. So that's like telling the story. But in that story, he just looking, didn't understand what he was looking at, but he looked. He didn't delude himself. He has any havana vasoger. Those state the Rebbe and David Gamanu. Never said the Maimah. And he was at Nur Simchas Torah like this. So that the emes is takad in the mice posher lies the etzer. Nisava kadosh baruch hu lisa dirib tachtoinim, and that's the Tanakh posher. That's the whole siddur. That's the whole paradox of life, the whole irony of life. Akol panim. Let's continue. Yeah, so ois beis. What did we? See, he brought the Rebbe Rashab and by analyzing the Rebbe Rashab's words, we'll also come to the conclusion that we're talking about Oyer and not Mer and Yechelis. Why give me one sentence? The Rebbe Rashab also obviously quotes this. He brings in Samach Vav. And again, we would think, without the fear to get Rebbe spelling it out, that this statement, Oyer in Sof Lamardin, is not speaking about Ein Sof itself, but rather where it's expressed in two different addresses, he says, two different places. No, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, it's only one place. And we can medayik this also from the Rebbe Rashab. Why? Because the Rebbe Rashab, when talking about Ein Sof, he says, no, that whole Ois. What's the second paragraph of Ois Aleph talking about? Summarize it. It's a mucher from the Bir and Hammers Samach Vav. Because what is he explaining in Samach Vav there? Bringing from the Rameh, Placharim. What was the summary of that Ois? What is the summary? The Rebbe Rashab asks, why did the Makabolim refer to God and his revelation as Ein Sof rather than Ein Leitchila? That's much higher. Because something can be Nitzchi but has a beginning. But has a beginning. But the true Nitzchi is no beginning, not just no end. And the answers, what we're saying, we're not talking about Mo'er, we're not talking about Atzmutz. This darga of Ein Sof, is taka Oir and Ha'or. So it's taka Mucharach that we're talking not Mo'er, not Yecheles, and not Atzmutz, which is really one address overall for us here. But we're talking Oir. But the Rebbe concludes and says, but Omdom, look at the last few lines of the Ois. Ikara Hechechu, from the Frierdiker Rebbe himself, that makes this statement, this extraordinary statement. There's two madregas, and not just that, great distinction between them, which therefore that it makes it patently clear, and there's no other way. We must perforce conclude that we're not talking Yecheles, because that's all one, but rather Oir. And we said before, but still Ein Sof, and the Kudav answer is, but it's a yes, and a yes means a no. Implicit in yes is no. And but why is it Sosam V'Ne'elam? Why is this Gilui Sosam V'Ne'elam? Answered just in one sentence. L'mayla gets it Sosam V'Ne'elam. Why? It's a Gilui. Gilui and Sosam V'Ne'elam are contradictions in terms. A Gilui which is Sosam V'Ne'elam, and the answer is, as we're suggesting, it's not in the Maimah, I'm suggesting it. No, we said it this morning. Why is it Sasam V'Ne'elam?
Considering it himself.
Because what's he being Megala? Megala Atzmos, that is beyond. He's considering his Ein Mulvado, his exclusivity, which cannot be articulated. So it's a Giloi, which is Sasam V'Ne'elam. Yeah, okay. Let's begin Ois Beis a little bit. We'll learn together. I didn't learn it yet. So why Take is the Frierdiker Rebbe emphasizing Shebeizin Yonim Dein Sof Lamayla Maden Ketz Matavin Tachlis Hein Beis Madreges Berin Sabaruch Chulu. Why is he emphasizing that we're talking about two different levels? V'loi kifish inyan zeh b'yecheles atzmos. And not as we would understand the Zohar itself as without the Pirush of the Frierdiker Rebbe, we would understand that at the level of Yecheles and leave it at that. No, he doesn't want to leave it at the level of Yecheles. The Frierdiker Rebbe wants the Oitzer to be tied to not the level of Yecheles, but the level of an actual what? Fill in the blank. An actual Gilui. Why? The Rebbe answers the Vishazen the Geya le Teuchen Klolos or Inyan Amavu B'Mayim Hailula. Because we're talking about the Oitzer that's given. I'm just guessing now. He's answering now. Because this is the Geya to the whole point of the Maimer. And what's the point of the Maimer is that the soldier is given over an Inyan, the Oitzer. So he wants to trace it to something givable. To a dargi already l'mayla with his gilui. So that what? So that I'm already putting words in, but we'll soon learn. Not that he just has it in the bowels of his being and doesn't affect him, but it's something that is been disgala by him, because he's getting a gilui atzmi, but a gilui. And therefore, to be revealed and used and expressed fully. So he doesn't, that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe is emphasizing, we're not talking Yecheles. Because then what it mean for the soldier? You could. No, but you could not. No, you will. You will, because we're already gilui, the process, this is bizgalos, this Indian. And therefore it's revealed by you, and it's going to happen, and you're going to achieve victory. That's what he means. That's what he's saying, where he's going with this. Clear what I just said. If he says otherwise, we'll retract, but I don't think so. Yeah, I see you looking a little bit further, he's saying that. Let's go with another line. Because what does the Frierdiker Rebbe want? Friends, a Maimer Bachlal, and obviously this last Maimer Basi Legani, where you can see it Begolo, this is not another few pages added to the Academy of Chassidus Chabad. Now there's another Maimer Basi Legani on the shelf. Because obviously it's not the point, not of that Maimer or any Maimer. The point is to empower us, some new koiches and new insight in order to achieve victory. And Ikka's new koiches, deeper connection, unlocking deeper connections of our own neshama. And that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe is doing here. The whole point is there should be that something, the koich that we have, begoli, in a conscious way, in a revealed way. Not that we could, we will. So he says, that the whole the Inyan of Oitzer Ma'id and Ketz of B'Mayim Lilula Kedei Levayer and so Inyan Oitzer L'Mayil is all to explain the Oitzer, the treasure Shezeh Masha Noistim L'Anshei Achayil, which is given to the soldiers Al Yidei Pekidei Achayil, through the officers, who are the officers that obey him Bishvil Nitzuach HaMilcham HaMenagid, in order to effect victory over the Menagid. And the point is not just Kedei Levayer, so we have an explanation. It's the Dam Shocher. Now, the Kivin continues, I go a little bit further, another minute, wait till the guys show who's already, good morning. Okay, Jeff, good morning. Kadei, Levi, the Kivin, now the Kivin, the Nisaf Lamadin Katz, who you know, it's a null. So since he explains in the statement to the Zohar, the Mile Madin Katz, Sosum, that's the treasure. The treasure cannot be potential, possibility. We're getting God's level of possibility. Okay, we'll elaborate this. On that level of Yechelis, there's no world, there's no Metzias. The whole point is you were going to engage the world. That's the whole point. You're getting that level would just mean a retreat, bittul b'metzias, not a soldier fighting on the front. There's nothing. It's inyan atzmi. It's not this gala. We'll, Beit Hashem, address this on Monday.